Welcome to the NFL Player Props Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by TheLines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guys Mo Nawara in the Midwest, and we've got Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are looking at a Week 5 of NFL Player Props in this video. Gentlemen, do want to make sure you guys are liked and subscribed to that page. Continue to follow along with us as we are bringing you these picks each and every week of this NFL regular season. Also want you to head to TheLines.com, have some great written content up there for you guys all football season long. Also have our great odds finder tool on there, so you can make sure that you are shopping those NFL lines and these player props to the best of your ability. Gentlemen, let's go ahead and jump right into things as we do each week. We're going to be bringing you some passing, rushing, and receiving props, starting with those passing. I'm going to kick things off with you, Nate, and Mr. Teddy Two Gloves, I believe, is who we're kicking the show off with today.
Teddy Bridgewater, if anyone has been a skeptic of him the last few years, I think he has a chance to put those doubters to bed here, because he's actually in a good situation. He's not on Denver or Carolina, which are two of the most laughingstock offenses continually here as we enter 2022. And I know you guys are going to touch on that in a minute. But no, Miami is a fantastic offense. Mike McDaniel still second in Coach of the Year running, and he's going to have some wrinkles in the red zone continually to try to get some passing looks down there. And I think it's a great matchup for Teddy to get over 1.5 touchdown passes here. First and foremost, the Jets have allowed 6 touchdowns at home this year, all through the air. The Dolphins have 9 passing touchdowns and only 2 rushing on the season, because, they're not going to be able to run it very effectively down there with Mostert or Chase Edmonds. And his weapons, Tyreek and Waddle, they're second and fourth in YAC. That's obviously not all just Tua hitting them on the numbers. I honestly think Teddy Bridgewater is just as good as Tua. And that, when you have a guy like Tyreek who's fourth in separation against man, it's going to be pretty easy to rack up yardage. The passing yards at 245, I mean, that's a competitive line. That's tough. Depends how this game kind of unfolds. But it's just 6.5 rushing yards for Teddy. I think that's a real easy bet right there. The guy can move. He can scramble, get out of the pocket, and pick up a couple of yards and get you 7. That seems easy. I think the touchdowns will be there. I think he's going to have a pretty productive day against a Jets team that's 29th in DVOA pass defense and just doesn't have much talent at the back end there.
I mean, I don't know, Mo, you tell me, are you willing to say that Teddy Two Gloves is as good as Tua right now? And even if he's not, I mean, it's still a reasonable passing prop to go over on.
I think it's probably pretty close. I'm definitely interested in Miami. I took some Miami at -3 earlier this week. So, I'm definitely with this. The passing yards, I agree. It's a little high. I don't think I would go for over there. I'm a little more interested in the touchdowns as well. I do think McDaniel can scheme up some touchdowns here. I do think they're going to have success on offense, more so than I guess a lot of the market probably thinks. I mean, I don't understand why this line moved that far off the look ahead when, we're not talking about a major difference in talent level at quarterback, I don't think. I mean, Teddy's been fine for years. He's probably the best backup in the league. So depends on the juice on that one. I'm guessing over 1.5 is going to be something like plus 120 or so, at least. So, I'm interested in a decent plus number there.
Yeah, it could be a little bit more, but either way, I do think that there's plenty of reason to feel good about the Dolphins this week. Like you said, Nate, I mean, even if let's say it is a downgrade to Teddy Two Gloves at this point in time, it's not much of one, if any at all. So this is still the same team, and I think we saw you saw Tyreek go off last week, which was a really big indicator of this offense can still run similarly, but things definitely got a little bit messed up for them in a game that they lost their first one of the season. So.
It's even money for the over on his touchdowns. But, I mean, I think that more speaks to the matchup and just what people think about the Jets' ability to stop anybody down there and the Dolphins' personnel.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Let's move on. Mo, do you want to go first? You want me to go first? Because we're both talking about Baker Mayfield here. We just have different things to say. I think I'll let you go first because I feel really confident in mine. I'm not worried about going second here in this debate.
Yeah, I think I should go first.
Yeah.
I want to let you rant after the stuff I say. I'm interested in Baker Mayfield over 190.5 passing yards. I know people are going to think that's completely absurd, but I think people are just not understanding how easy it is to go over 190.5 passing yards. Basically, anybody that's not Justin Fields can surpass this number fairly easily. I mean, this is a very, very low number, okay? Last week, the Rams passing offense looked like absolute poop, all right? Complete and utter garbage. And Matt Stafford threw for 254 yards. I mean, they had 3.6 yards per attempt dropping back. That's how easy it is to pass 190.5. This is not a hard number to get past, okay? So basically the worst passing performance a pro football offense can have went 60 yards past this. The main reason it looked so bad was because the Rams pass blocking is absolutely god awful right now, okay? PFF has them 32nd. My eyes tell me that sounds right. The Panthers are 11th, so they're actually doing a reasonable job protecting the passer. Now, granted, they have not faced many tough pass rushes, okay? But I think even if the Niners are completely dominating, which I don't think is going to happen this game, he could even get past this number in garbage time. But my whole thing with this game is it's a really sleepy spot for the Niners, man. They're coming off a huge win on national TV, short week, traveling across the country. I think they come out a little sleepy here, and I think Baker Mayfield can get to 200 plus yards here, man. This is not a high number, okay? I know it's the Niners, and I know it's Baker Mayfield, but this number is very, very low.
It is very low. But if it's so easy to throw 190 yards in the NFL, why has he done it one time this season? Is my question. And I really look. There's not much to like about that offense. Their weapons in on the outside, at least in DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, are fun guys to see. Breaking away for a 70-yard teeter once every 7 or 8 weeks on NFL Red Zone. But it's not a sustainable offense. Christian McCaffrey, wonderful running back, potentially the best in the league, right? At least the most versatile, the best pass catching running back we've seen in a very, very long time. Marshall Faulk-esque. Doesn't matter, right? And I don't dislike this offensive line either. You're totally right. But I don't like Baker Mayfield with time, without time, in any capacity. I don't want Baker Mayfield, and I would not want to put my money on him. I think that the numbers, like, to me, the funny part here is I literally am like, I'm ready to bet whatever I have. Like, I'm just putting it down because to me, you've got the bottom 3 quarterback in the NFL, stats wise, eye test wise, smell wise, bottom 3, right? Then you've got the best defense in the league, best pass defense in the league, best pass defense that we've seen in 3 to 5 years through 4 games. Granted, defense had a nice lull there where nobody cared about it, and there weren't very many good defenses for a few years. But this is easily the best one that we've seen in some time so far, especially because they're finally healthy. So I think the combination of pressure percentage, which is their highest at 34% in the league, number 1, sack percentage, and the rest, their blitz. They don't even need to blitz more than 4, maybe 5 occasionally, but they've always got plenty of guys left in the box and on the outside. There's just, to me, I do agree that I think Baker will be throwing in this game. I definitely hit a nice teaser of those Packers and the 49ers together, as I think both those games under 3 feels really, really good. And so I do think Baker's going to have to try to throw their way back into this. But even when he does, it's going to be the same dink and dunk, and that's all he's going to really have at this point, as that ball to the outside is just awful. I could not love this bet more. And I appreciate you letting me rant for a bit longer on that one.
Sounds like we need to bet a 6-pack.
Definitely.
Me versus you. I'll buy you one.
Done.
If he goes, all right, we're booked.
All right. And stepping in as arbitrator here, I mean, now it's gained some juice actually going up 196.5 at DraftKings now. You can't get that 190 number anymore. So people are kind of siding with Mo here that you can back your way into 200 passing yards in the NFL, especially when you have Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore, and you can just kind of dump it off to those guys. I mean, I think Matt Rule has to game plan like his job depends on it this week, and they did a terrible job with Baker's skill set the last two weeks. He had 9 passes batted down last week. He's not a pocket passer, man. I mean, you got to get him out, get him moving, get him going with McCaffrey and DJ on these like whip Z routes, get something going. And I because of the spot, because of the 49ers in this letdown spot, I tend to lean more towards 200 yards can happen one way or another. Maybe a cover can happen, but God help us. The Panthers are not going to win this game against a superior 49ers defense.
Yeah, I mean, I do. You guys are making sense about the 49ers and the lull. And I said last week when I was actually attending the 49ers-Rams game that I was happy to bet on the 49ers because they had lost the previous week. And Jimmy G is not a consistent quarterback. So whatever he did the previous week, I'm going to assume he's going to do the opposite the next week. And I don't love his chances in this one either. But either way, it's not going to be the most fun game to watch. I just love betting against Baker Mayfield. So let's get some rushing props in here, guys. Dalvin Cook, Nate, let's talk about him for a minute. Struggled last week. I wonder how healthy he truly is, but his at 78.5 rushing yards for a guy that was recently considered the best, if not a top 3 running back in the league, doesn't seem too high.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he had trouble against the Saints, who perennially being one of the best rush defenses, but two games on the fast turf in Minnesota this year is 90 and 96 rush yards. In his career in wins, he averages 99 rushing yards. And at nearly 5 yards per carry. And so the Vikings are 7.5 point favorites against the Bears, who everybody can run on, who everybody will run on, because the Bears offense never has the ball. They're dead last in drive success rate. So they're only 24th in DVO rush defense, but they are dead last in terms of giving up rushing yards per game at 183. Cook's usage is still pretty strong. He's getting about a 70% snap share. Madison mixing in a little bit. The injury concerns maybe are keeping his props down a little. And the passing usage has been disappointing, but that's not what we're going for here. We're going for 79 rushing yards for Mr. Cook. And I think it's very likely here against this Bears defense because of the situation. You look at what the Vikings are doing when they're under center and Cooks is back there, he's getting a carry on 70% of those plays. So, I mean, it's just a pretty simple game plan here against a rebuilding team. It's at home. They should control the ball throughout. So I think that's a fine total for Dalvin to get over.
I like the Vikings this week. I like the Vikings laying the points. So I think if I like the Vikings laying the points, I have to be somewhat in support of this prop. I mean, I think there's many scripts where the Vikings win this by 20. And if that happens, Dalvin Cook is going to go over this number. I mean, I expect them to do most of their damage through the air. But it's like you said, I mean, averaging 100 rushing yards per game in wins makes sense. I mean, they're probably up. They're probably killing the clock. And I think even if they're doing that, they could get yards against this god-awful Bears defense. So this makes some sense to me. And I don't think you're buying high here after Dalvin's off to a little bit of a slow start this year.
Yeah, this is a good time to buy on Dalvin for sure. Like I said, especially after last week getting stifled and really having no running room on the outside against the Saints, which he was looking for, even though they did win that game. I'm so always scared to bet on Kirk Cousins too in a game that he should win, but this he should be fine tonight, and I am going to be forced to start him in fantasy again. Give us your rushing prop here, Mo. I believe we're talking about Mr. Fournette, right, on the Buccaneers?
Yeah, this is a weird one. Usually I'm almost always looking at yards, but this one just kind of popped out to me when I was looking at some different players. 16.5 rushes for Leonard Fournette. I mean, I was looking, okay, last year he's only averaging about a little under 13 carries per game. This year he's getting 15 carries total in the past 2 games, okay? So why do I think the over 16.5 is going to come home? Well, you just look at the way those game scripts went early in this season. The first 2 games, the Bucs were in neutral/positive scripts. Fournette got 21 carries and 24 carries. I think the second game where he got 24 carries against the Saints is even more encouraging than anything we've seen, far as statistically pointing to this over, because he only had 65 yards. So basically, they're not running the ball well in that game, but they're still handing the ball to Leonard Fournette a bunch when they're up. And they obviously should be up here. They're 10-point favorites at home against the Falcons. I think the new coaching staff is trying to lean much more into the running game. We saw that the first 2 weeks. Then they fell behind the Packers. They fell behind big against the Chiefs. So they completely abandoned the run in those games. And I think the market's just saying, well, average, he's getting this many carries, so this line makes sense. But it really kind of doesn't, because if the Bucs are up, he's going to pass this number, and they should be up. I mean, and he should be getting yards, which should make them even more so want to hand off here. The Falcons are atrocious against the run, man. They're 26th in DVOA, 31st in EPA per play against the run. This is a run defense that even a Bucs running game that hasn't really gotten off the ground this year should have some success against. And yeah, I'll be pretty surprised if he doesn't get 17 carries in this game. They really want him to be the clear lead back. I mean, Rashad White got a bunch of snaps last week, but it was after they were down, and they were basically just having him catch passes. I mean, he had like 3 carries in that game.
Yeah, no, I fully feel that. And I kind of wish that I had taken Leonard Fournette because I was always scared of that Bucs backfield. I think that's what we're also used to seeing was Leonard Fournette would get in there, but then there would be a lot of sharing carries with guys through the years like the Ronald Jones and Barbers and the rest of those type of guys over the last 3 years or so. And I think, yeah, it's very obvious this year that they're just trying to stuff the ball with him down their throat. He's even caught a few more balls too. So the 17 rushes does feel like a lot, to be honest. But like everything you said, especially about the way that this game should go, and if you're playing that game theory and from the start, then that's what your picks are. That's what these player props are picked somewhat based on anyway. So I'll finish off the rushing props here. And I'm going to say Cam Akers on the Rams, but I also don't care if you want to take Darrell Henderson on the Rams, like 31.5 yards. I just think what I saw last week from the Rams and the obvious ways in which they were unable to establish the run. And to be honest, they didn't run the ball that poorly against the 49ers last week. They kept trying to do what they do, which is, McVay and all of his movement pre-snap and trying to create space and things of that nature. I think he needs to realize, and I think he will, that he's going to need to run the ball this week, and he's going to need to establish that because he's playing the Cowboys, and the Cowboys are going to bring pressure, and they're going to have a defensive line that's going to pin their ears back. Micah Parsons, as good as he is, and as good as he is even at stopping the run, is looking to pressure. And I think Matt Stafford right now with that pass defense that pass blocking that's awful that we spoke about earlier. That's going to be a problem for them. And if they can't run the ball, he's going to get clobbered once again, just as much as he did last week against what I've called the best defense in the last 3 to 4 years in the 49ers. The Cowboys do not stop the run nearly as well as they stop the pass. And that's in large part because, well, obviously they have 2 wonderful defensive backs there. Obviously Diggs, we know what he can do. And then you talk about their pass rush, that's what they rely upon. So if you can run the ball, which teams have been able to, and it's not just the fact that, that the Cowboys rush defense has lacked a bit, in part because their pass defense is so good. They are clearly selling out a bit to that. Yeah, I think that it's also huge that they're top 10 in missed tackles so far this season, which is huge because I do think a part of that is them just running as fast as they can towards the quarterback to crush him, and a lot of that leaves people open to be able to just juke and make moves. So Cam Akers is at 45.5 rushing yards. Darrell Henderson's at 31.5. Cam's been getting a few more carries over the past like 3 or 4 games, the past 3 games or so, after only getting 3 in the first game of the season. So I do think he's back to the clear starter. But at 31.5 yards, Darrell Henderson could get that in 3 or 4 rushes if he comes in as a nice change of pace guy. So I'd feel good about either of them, to be honest with you.
3 or 4 rushes, man. What Rams team are you watching? I mean, the offensive line is not just bad in pass blocking; they are straight up bad. And I'm kind of interested in the Cowboys plus 5.5 on the road here, which isn't really on the road at SoFi Stadium. I have no faith in the Rams offense at all right now. I have to see something that tells me that Sean McVay is not a step behind at this point in his career after losing so many coaches, that this offensive line can do anything, that Cam Akers has any explosion after his Achilles injury. I hope you're right because I'm forced to start him in a flex in one league, and I hope he can do something, but I am out on the Rams until we see something more.
Pile low, baby. For sure. So I think, and that's what Mo would tell us. Let's move on to receiving props, Nate. I'm not going to argue with you too much there. I am going to say that's part of my strategy, obviously. I'm buying a little bit low on these Rams, and I think there has to be a big change made. I still believe in McVay a bit until I see that he truly can't get it done. But receiving props, Nate, we're starting with a guy who's starting to peak. We've all been sort of talking about him preseason, coming into this season, and Chris Olave on the Saints. So what do you like about him in his matchup this week?
Well, Jameis is back, and that means he's just going to be airing it out. As we saw in his last 2 starts, he just said, I'm just going to bomb it to Olave. I'm not going to read the defense. I'm not even going to look at anything. We're just going to run a go route. And he had 410 air yards in 2 weeks, did the rookie. 13 targets in both those games. It's just so clear that this matchup is appealing that I wonder if there will just somehow it won't go right. But I mean, the props are still pretty low for 64 yards for Olave. And for his longest catch to be 23 yards. I mean, the average depth of target for him is extremely high at this point. And he's facing a guy, Tariq Woolen, who's allowing 16 yards per target. The Seahawks are allowing the most yards per pass. They are dead last in DVOA pass defense. And at this point, Michael Thomas isn't practicing. Jarvis Landry's banged up. So if the Saints are going to air it out, if there's going to be production here in a real desperate spot for them against a really bad defense, you got to think the rookie continues his hot stretch. So, I mean, he's an appealing DFS play, and I think he should get his yardage here.
Yeah, I like it. I think, especially with rookie receivers, I do like throughout the season continuing to see them progress and get better. Their routes get better. They get more targets and more trust from their quarterback. And I think Jameis he's not lacking of trust. He just heaves it anyway. So I think that does bode well for the air yards and the ability for Olave to get a little bit more down the field. So I'm happy to see what your pick here for the next one is, Mo, because you have a DK Metcalf under, and I have Tyler Lockett on my fantasy team. So perhaps that bodes well for me. If he's not catching the ball, maybe Tyler Lockett is.
Yeah, I think that has a correlation for you there for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think DK Metcalf under 61.5. I know it's not like the highest number in the world, but it's a really tough matchup. I think he's going to get a lot of Marcus Lattimore. We know how well Marcus Lattimore has traditionally matched up with kind of the bigger, more physical receivers. That's kind of where his strength has been over the years. And obviously, Metcalf is pretty much a monster in that sense. But Marcus Lattimore, I think, is going to make life really tough for him.
Marshawn
Lattimore. Apologies. When I was looking at the way the season has gone for Seattle, I know that their offense is really hot right now and everybody wants to back it. But look at the defenses they've played the last couple of weeks. I mean, it's the Falcons and the Lions. I mean, the Lions might be the worst in the world. He went for 64 yards against the Falcons, 149 yards against Detroit. Those are just two clown defenses. And the weeks before, when they faced tough defenses, 49ers and the Broncos, say what you want about the Broncos offense. Their defense has been tremendous this year. He had 36 yards and 35 yards. And those two pass rushes put a lot of pressure on Geno Smith. He's throwing under pressure a lot, not on balance, and having a tough time. I mean, they could barely move the ball against the 49ers. I know that the Saints have sucked so far at pressuring the passer, but I think they're due to be better. I mean, Cameron Jordan and Marcus Davenport, these are still two very good pass rushers, and they're facing a bad Seattle offensive line. So I think they're going to bounce back here. This looks like a get-right game for the Saints defense. I think they're going to put Geno under a lot of pressure, and with Lattimore spending more than 50% of his snaps this year shadowing an opposing receiver, I can't imagine it's going to be anybody but DK Metcalf here. So I do like under 61.5 here. I know it's inside, but it's still just a tough spot for him, I think.
Yeah, I don't know how you feel about that one, Nate. I like the thought process here, and to be honest, why I selected Tyler Lockett is the thought process that obviously if I can't get DK Metcalf, I know the connection that Geno has with him, and I know that he's a nice underneath option for him, even though he's a speedster. When DK Metcalf's flying, so I understand that he is coming off the 149 yards. I'm actually a little bit surprised that 61.5 is his prop. It feels a little bit low compared to what he's been capable of this season. But yeah, if Lattimore of the Marshawn variety is going to be covering him to that degree, that I can understand that being a bit scary. So I'm going to finish this off here, guys, with Mr. George Pickens, and it's 38.5 receiving yards for the young Steeler in a game that, look, I'm not saying that the Steelers need to have it. I don't really think that they're going very far this season. They're, for the first time since Mike Tomlin's been there, I believe they are double or 14-point underdogs, which is not something he's ever been before in the regular season. So clearly they're not expecting much. Kenny Pickett is going to get the start. So you've got rook to rook here, in my opinion. I love that in Kenny Pickett clearly favoring George Pickens. So I mean, even if you just look at Pickens's targets going from week 1 on, they've increased. I mean, weeks 1 and 2, we're talking about 3 and 2 targets. Last 2 weeks, we're talking about 7 and 8 targets, and he hauled in 6 of 8 targets last week for that 102 yards. When Kenny Pickett came in, he threw more than half of his passes to George Pickens. 7 of his 13 targets were to Pickens. So I think 6 of his 13, so nearly half. But I think you still love like we talk about here with these receiving props, targets. And clearly Kenny Pickett has locked on to a guy that has one of the widest catch radiuses in the league already, as we've already seen him put together an Odell Beckham style catch that really made the highlights. So 30.5 is way too low, and I think that's going to continue to rise and probably stay closer to 50, 55, depending on the matchup for that guy the rest of the season if Kenny Pickett's going to be throwing to him that often. So.
And yeah, just to piggyback off what you were saying, I mean, I know that the Bills have a great defense and they've had a great secondary, talent-wise the last few years, but rookie corners this year, and then Jordan Poyer is out. I know you wrote in the notes that, he was questionable, and he was, but he was just announced out, I believe, this morning. So that could clear the way for some more success for these Steelers receivers.
Yep, 100%. So feeling pretty good about our picks this week, gentlemen. I think we're getting into a decent groove. We missed you last week, Mo, as you keep us honest. Not expecting you to be the one to take over on Baker Mayfield's passing yards this week, but I'm looking forward to my 6-pack. I think I'll probably make it Modelo.
The over is the contrarian side in this case.
I suppose so. It still feels fishy. At any rate, we will be back continuing on next week. Make sure you're liked and subscribed to that page so you can continue to follow along with us. And until we see you next, happy betting.